So hi everyone, welcome back to today's tutorial, and in this tutorial I would be giving you some information on project feasibility. So let's get into it. So what is feasibility study? So feasibility study is analysis done before any planning or execution to determine the probability of an event or project being completed successfully given various influencing factors. So always keep in mind feasibility study is done before planning or execution. So you need to determine whether whatever event or whatever project you're trying to execute will actually be completed successfully or not. Okay? Given various influencing factors, this is something important that you need to keep in mind. Influencing factors, because there are various factors that can determine whether an event or project will occur successfully or not. Now, why I say event or project, it can be a project that you're trying to find, a feasibility study, or it can be a simple event that is any live event, or it can be any event that is being conducted in an organization. Anything, it can be of any event. So that's why I mentioned an event and also a project. So, who does the feasibility study? So, once you know that there has to be a feasibility study and why. So, anyone who has a good interest and knowledge about the business, domain, industry, or area. So, why I say good interest? Because for a project or an event to be executed, there can be n number of ways to execute it, okay? But you need to make sure that whatever is being executed is to the best interests of the organization. It shouldn't be anything that will, cause any backfiring, or it shouldn't bring any other, consequences to the business. So it always has to be in a good interest, so that if you're able to foresee certain risks or problems, you would also bring it to the notice. So always you should have a good interest for your project or the organization for which a feasibility study is being done. And also the person who's doing it should have good knowledge about the business, domain, industry, or area. So only if a person has knowledge on that, only will then they'll be able to understand the nuances, risks, and problems that will arise. So usually the people who do it is the owner, the business owner. So sometimes if the business owner doesn't have much of, the area of expertise or the knowledge about a particular domain or industry, then what they do is they have consultants, or you have subject matter experts, and you also have other people also who have a prior knowledge of what decision should be taken, or past experience, of a particular feasibility study being done, and what was the different, procedures being followed. So there are other people also that can be involved in a feasibility study. So the next one is, why do a feasibility study? So now, sometimes you might think, why should I think so much into it? Okay, let's just go and, execute the plan or project or an event. But there are three aspects that mainly why you have to do a feasibility study. First one is to foresee any potential risks or problems that may arise or exist. So sometimes when you start off an event or business, you would definitely not have an idea or 360 idea of what might happen. You will always, some people are, very, they have positive vibes, and they have, that positive energy, and they say nothing's going to, affect my business, everything's going to go on well. But actually, practically speaking, there needs to be a feasibility study in order to do a full analysis of what can be the potential risks or problems, okay, actually, before you invest that time, capital, and resources also. So suddenly in the middle of a project or an event, if you're stuck, then that's going to create all the more bigger chaos. So it's always best to do a feasibility study to foresee potential risks or problems that exist. Some problems might exist, you're able to identify, and some problems would arise given that particular process or that particular execution phase that you are going in. So this is one aspect why you do have to do a feasibility study. The second one is to analyze the various factors that would influence the project and adopt the right execution approach. So, as I said, when people do a feasibility analysis, it's not always that you have to check, okay, I'm putting in so much of money, I'm putting in $10, and tomorrow I need to get $30. If I'm getting $30, then it's feasible. That should not be the mindset that you should have. You should not only do a financial feasibility study, but there are much more other factors that actually affect the business or an event or project. There are various factors, and that I would be showing in the forthcoming slides, and you would get to know. So given all these factors, when something goes wrong, you should have an idea, okay, if this is going to be an influencing factor, and if this factor is going to be a little of a pain point for me to execute this, you should be able to adopt the right execution approach and strategy. The next one is to determine the approximate ROI, so the return of investment. So on executing this particular project and event or product, if you're launching a product or if you're expanding your business, what would be the return of investment that I would get back? Now, if you see at the end of the day, it all depends on what's the benefits you're getting back. So you put so much of time, you put so much of effort, you put so much of capital into something, and then you need to see what you get back. So if there's nothing going to you don't get back much of a return, then that's going to be not feasible, like speaking of financial wise, okay, and profits. So that's something that you would be able to determine ahead of time as to how much of returns of investments you would get. So if you're like fully into the financial side, then it's return of investments in the form of cash, or it can be like in the form of any service that you'll be getting back as a return, or if there's any other aspects that you would be getting back. So this is why a feasibility study is always recommended to be done before starting off, before ever planning, putting down a plan for your project or your business. Feasibility study has to always be done. And the next one is, in the feasibility study, as I said, there are various factors that can affect the project. So there was a video that I put up earlier as it's the name, the business environment. So in that video, to give you a gist on what that is, I found it very relevant to this feasibility study. The business environment, I'll give you a gist. So if you didn't get watch this video, you can always click on the link given in the description box, but I'll give you just an overview of this. So generally a business has two environments. It's the micro and the macro. So the micro environment is something that is within the business, okay. It can be the structure of the business, the size of the business, the policies relating to the business. There can be all that is within a business. So that's why it says the micro environment. And the internal matters of a business that can affect a business or a project or an event, okay. So the next one is the macro environment of business environments, okay. Or it's called the external environment. So the external environment can be demographic, economic, geographical, legal, technological, social, cultural, political. So these can be the various environmental, the external environmental factors that can also be an influencing factor on your business or your project. So if you want to know more about each of these factors, you can view that video, that the link that I've given in the description box. So here is an example. This was actually a real life scenario where people had to take a decision. So, and how feasibility study actually helped them. So there was a school which was around 125 years old, and the management wanted to construct a new building because it's an old school, and then the floorings and then the entire building was weak, there was vibrations, and it's risky for the students and for the staffs. So the management did not have the full funds needed for the project. So the school management decided to do a feasibility study where the school had to take into consideration various factors. So the first factor is financial feasibility. So they didn't have all the funds. They had, for the current funds that they had, it was not enough. So they had to generate income through donations from alumni and from the current, students, and also on executing this big project and enhancing the school, constructing it to a modern building with all modern facilities. So eventually the fees, everything would, kind of increase. So increasing that, will students actually start coming in? Will they be able to afford it? Which will be your return of investment, is something that a feasibility, the financial side of things, had to be analyzed. The next one is the economic and demographic feasibility. So the given the demographics of the alumni, the students, the background, the economic status, and all of these factors, the school had to determine how much of donation they can actually ask for from the students, the minimum amount of donation. Okay, it shouldn't be too much above the budget, it shouldn't be too less. So they had to come up with that. And also for whatever is the, as I said, whatever is the enhancements being done or construction being done, for whatever inputs and efforts being put, what would be the outcome. So that was something that had to be analyzed. And the next one is geographic and ecological. So it may not be very much relevant to this project, but sometimes geographic factors, such as when you have to do a construction, you need to plan out the time in the year where construction has to be done. You cannot go in during the monsoon time, then definitely there'll be a halt of work. So that also can be an affecting factor. And the next one is legal. So there are various legal aspects that also need to be followed. And um, you know um, try it has to be followed, and they have to, they cannot afford to dodge those legal factors and violate those legal policies put down. So the school, there are certain restrictions as to how many buildings should be constructed, sorry, how many floors need to be constructed, what's the structure that it has to be constructed. There are a lot of other legal issues also that are involved, and that also has to be taken into account and consideration and analyzed. The next one is the resources. So given you have a school, you have existing staff, students, classes going on, so how are you going to manage all those resources? So how are you going to manage time? And then money is another resource. So that also has to be analyzed as to how are you going to alter the, maybe the timings for schools, and how are you going to manage the students and the staff's time schedules. Everything has to be, that is also another aspect. You cannot afford to halt everything down and then say I'm closing down the school and then this is what is going to happen. So there has to be a continuity of the education. So that is something that has to be analyzed. And then you have the social environment also. So imagine if the school is, if it's going to be somewhere in the outskirts of a city or a place, then it's fine. Sometimes you won't have any issues. But imagine the school is in a residential area, and then there's suddenly construction and heavy noise, and then there's over traffic everywhere. Sometimes it won't be actually accepted by the locality and the social surroundings, so even the people. So all that has to be taken into consideration. So if there are certain health centers or something that's nearby, then that also has to be taken into consideration. The next one is technical issues, so that also has to be analyzed. So if, let's say, the school plans to do some online classes, so they should have the technical resources available to conduct those online classes. So everyone should have those resources. So, and there can be other various technical aspects, but this is some example that I gave you. You have cultural and also political environments and factors that can influence the the project or the business. So all these factors you have to take into consideration. So if it's going to be a business, a school that's being running a business, definitely cultural, public holidays, and certain cultural sentiments, all this need to be taken into consideration. Political side, there would be certain rules that you have to follow and certain policies. So all this has to be taken into consideration when you're doing a feasibility study. You cannot just look at just what is the financial benefits that you're going to get, and if you're getting a benefit then it's feasible. No, these are all, so I hope you, these are all the other factors that would affect the project or an event. So I hope you got some information on how to do the feasibility study and what are the factors that you actually should take into account to do a feasibility study. So If this video was helpful, please do give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.